Hey everyone, Elena Chima here, and today marks the 7th anniversary of when Legends of Chima first aired on Cartoon Network. The series is incredible, not gonna lie. But to celebrate today, I've decided to count down my top 5 favorite episodes of Legends of Chima. Do keep in mind that this is my personal opinion and that your favorites may be different than mine. So let's get started. Coming in at number 5, we have Reunion Gone Wrong. And basically, this pretty much undoes the happy peace talks of the previous 3 episodes, I think. Yes, 3 if you count Crocodile Tears. Anyway, what happens in this one? Crueler sabotages the peace talks with a fog of destiny, and it turns into a big ugly fight. Val must go to extreme lengths to save the day. And this one was initially going back. I went back and forth with this one and the following episode, Laval in Exile, because both are very strong episodes, especially in terms of Laval's character. But I went with Reunion Gone Wrong for a different reason other than character. This actually was the first Legends of Chima episode I sat down and watched. At the time, my brother was watching this series via online, and then we found out it was on Netflix. That's where I primarily watched my Chima episodes until they removed it. Oh, Netflix, I will not forgive you for that. But yes, this was the first episode I sat down and watched, and when I watched it, I kind of went, okay, it's nothing new. I mean, it's stylized. It definitely looks neater and more unique than Ninjago, but yeah, whatever. And then when I went back through it again after watching most of the series and saw how far Lavelle had come, I kind of felt a sense of pride there when he gave this scene, when he said that this was one of those sacrifices. Oh, you have no idea how powerful that was. Well, I'm sure you do. But anyway, I picked Reunion Gone Wrong over Lavelle in Exile, mostly because this is my first Chima episode I watched, and therefore it holds a very special place in my heart. Coming in at number 4, we have Eagle and the Bear, otherwise known as episode 24 in the lineup. Most of the Outland series is underrated as a whole. I can see why they made it so short, even though I'm not happy about that. It's probably because they didn't want as much filler as Ninjago. God, first half of season 2. Anyway, this episode is primarily it acts as a sort of Mission Impossible style rescue. You forgot the bear trapped on one rock and the eagle's eggs on the other. You take one off, the other one goes splat. So the Chima heroes take Lavertis's wind shadow and they fly to the rescue. It's a crazy balancing act, and eventually they escape with the rescued legend beasts. This episode delivers 2 things. One is a really sweet friendship moment between Krager and Laval. As seen in this picture, Krager rescues Laval from drowning, as opposed to in the first episode, a couple of episodes when he left Laval to drown. And they even poke fun at this a little bit. Krager is just pretty much like, I know, and I left you. I'm really sorry about that. And Laval's like, bro, it's chill. You're still my best friend, no matter what. It's a really sweet moment, especially when Krager says that he's going to teach Laval to swim, and he wishes it. Laval's like, dude, I always sink. Krager instead delivers this punch. He says, nah, water's like friendship. It only pulls you down if you fight it. And it's a really powerful moment, honestly. And it's really sweet, and it's very much true. Friendship, it hurts when you fight again with each other. So you have to embrace them. Flow. And your friends will lift you up and take you to all the places you ever wanted to go. And it's really fun, especially in episode 26, a couple episodes later, when Laval uses Krager's wisdom to rescue the lion legend beast by swimming. The other cool moment about this one is the cliffhanger at the end, where it's revealed that King Crominus is alive and has been captured by the crawlers. This sets the stakes in motion for the next 2 episodes, where, yeah, things pretty much go south for the heroes in a hurry. Anyway, I picked this episode because this episode was Krager and Laval moment. It's a really sweet moment, and it shows how far their relationship has come. So that's where I put episode 24. It's my fourth or favorite episode, and it's probably my favorite of the Outland series overall. I know many of you guys will recognize this still because it has appeared in pretty much any video that has to do with Laval. whether it's by himself or with somebody different. But this image comes from my favorite of the Fire versus Ice episodes, and it's called The King Thing. The King Thing is one of those episodes where you kind of need to watch the previous episode to see where it starts, and the next episode to see how it ends. So it's kind of the middle ground there. Most of the Fire and Ice episodes up to this point had been kind of hit and miss, especially with our Fire Boy here. The Lavella moment in 31 is kind of like his big moment, and then he just kind of like stands on the side there. Even though I know Eris is the focus of the season, Lavella had to get that one good moment, and then this episode came out of nowhere. Honestly, it surprised me when I watched it the first time. Because in the previous episode, Laval's father, Legravis, was captured by the Ice Hunters, so Laval must step in to take his place as king until, as Longtooth puts it, his father returns. So we get already off the bat, we got Laval out of his comfort zone. He's not used to the duties of being king, which includes solving tribal debates and about 500 pounds of paperwork, give or take. Anyway, Laval wants the action. He would rather free his father, and he gets his action when the hunters deliver a furious onslaught against the Longing Temple. Initially outnumbered, the Lavals are rescued by the aid of the Phoenix, and then Lavelle loses his girlfriend in the process. Yes, Lavera shippers. I am a pro Lavella shipper. I support Lavelle and Layla, but I can respect you if you ship Lavelle and Eris together. I do think they are just as cute. Anyway, this episode is good for Laval's character, and actually events of this episode would influence my fanfiction. In the Realm Hero Chronicles Round 2, Laval steps up to the plate to become King of the Lions again, but this time with a longer period than I think this episode goes about 24 hours, if. And maybe at the most a couple of days. Timelines are not very well expressed in the series. But yes, in the Realm Hero Chronicles of Round 2, Laval must step in to take his place as king again, and following the capture of the Realm Elders. And this time it's for a lot longer, and it ends up becoming a lot worse. But I won't give away spoilers for that there. You'll have to get on Wattpad yourself and read it. Anyway, this is Laval's episode to shine. I think up to this point, Laval had been kind of sitting on the back burner, and just seeing him come into his own in this episode was really something special to watch. His fight against Sir Vangar on the bridge is equally splendid. With blast shots, we get cool close-ups of their eyes. And a lot of snarling and growling. I even made a gif about it that says quit snarling at each other. But yes, this episode is good for Laval's character, and especially since it would later influence him in the Realm Hero Chronicles. And also, this really shows how tight he is and how lost he can be without his father. At the beginning of the episode, he's very much, let's go get him back. And it's only after Longtooth says that and reminds him that a true king needs to put his responsibilities first that Laval reluctantly steps into the throne. Oh. It's a good episode for Laval. It's a good episode for Longtooth, too. He gets a good chunk of the spotlight. And it's just a very fun episode to watch. I remember the first half of this being all dramatic. Like, oh my gosh, new king, Laval's like on edge. And then the second half being full of action. And it's rare that episodes can balance that kind of drama and this kind of action. And it really surprised me. This episode is full of surprises, as was its predecessor. And while Slippery Slope was equally good in terms of action, I just found King Thing more enjoyable. This episode is definitely the height of the Fire vs. Ice season, and yes, Wings of Fire and the Great Illumination can go stuff it. Coming in at number 2, we have the Season 1 finale. Yes, I like the Season 1 finale a lot more than I did the series finale. Like I said, Wings of Fire and Heart of Kinflora can go stuff it. But I'm not here to talk about them. This episode for Chima is one of those episodes that is a really enjoyable episode to watch, but like with most season finales, it makes sense if you've seen the context of the entire story. This one opens up immediately on the heels of episode 19, very similar to how our last pick opened up on the heels of episode 34. And this episode 20, really, I guess it really proved a bond between friends. There's a lot of action that happens in this one as you see tires fly across the screen, a lot of screaming, a lot of explosions. I think one time I haven't counted the explosions yet, but I'm pretty sure there's at least 5 big explosions if you don't count the individual blast shots. If somebody actually wants to get on there and watch episode 20 and then tell me in the comment section below how many blast shots they count and how many explosions, that actually would be very interesting for me to find out. It's going to take a little bit of work, but I would like to see what you guys come up with. Anyway, the fight between Gregor and Laval on the bridge of Lion City is just as epic, and it actually feels like a lot of the great battles of Chima happened on the bridge of Lion City. Just saying. But I think this one was the first, major battle. And then they both fall off, and Laval supposedly dies from the fall, which is the image we have here. It turns out he doesn't die, he fakes it, and it's a really good fake the death, too. I mean, they fell, you figure, at least 20 feet? No, maybe more like almost 60, 100 feet, maybe? And yet Laval didn't break anything, at least not that we know of. Oh, and not to mention he had a crocodile land on him, and you figure those crocodiles aren't very light. So I'm surprised the kid was still able to sneak off as well as he could without yelping in pain. Anyway, as Krager buys it, the deception hook, line, and sinker, thinks his best friend's dead and decides to surrender to the lions. And he's not the only one that falls for it. Legravis here falls for this too, and he's completely devastated, as any parent would be, to find out that their kid is dead. And he probably says, okay, you know what, screw peace and formality, I'm gonna kill every croc just because they killed my son. And even at the end, when Laval comes back on the crocodile legend beast, Legravis acts as though he knew that Laval was still alive, and he went to go get the lion legend beast. It's unclear whether or not he actually knew anything or not, or if he just decided to play along with this deception. It's not clear. But, yeah. Like the King thing, this episode would actually go on to have later influences in RHC Round 2, and actually this picture would appear at the beginning of Chapter 25, The King's Grief. In that chapter, Legravis, as a prisoner in the Realm Elders, with the Realm Elders, discovers that Laval was killed in combat against the Chronopolins and scouts. Legravis is devastated and flashes back to when he found Laval's dead body. But only this time, he can't find the body, he can't find proof. The only proof the scouts brought back was Laval's stolen headpiece. Now, while the chapter ends with Legravis promising vengeance, and while he does get close to vengeance, it's nothing quite like the happy reunion he finds at the end. But that's all I'm gonna say. Overall, this episode kept me on the edge of my seat. A lot of action, a lot of drama, and basically, it's one of those episodes that's meant to make you cry. And interestingly enough, the first time I didn't watch it, remember I jumped in at about episode 16. I didn't cry, and then after watching the series again as a whole, I actually did start crying a little bit, and now I can't watch this episode without crying. At least on the inside, anyway. And that's why this episode takes my number 2 spot on the list. And my number 1 favorite episode of Legends of Chima has to be the Chi Jackers. Now, I know what many of you guys are thinking. This episode can easily be seen as filler, so why the heck is this episode so high and is my absolute favorite of the series? Well, I'll tell you. This episode was the one that actually made me fall in love with the series to begin with. Up until this point, I was kind of like, okay. There were some episodes of Chima that, and especially in the earlier episodes, that were like, okay, it's great. And then there were these, oh my gosh, what was this? And then there were the, okay, that's just bizarre. Then Foxtrot came around and it was amazing. I liked it. And Chi Checkers, in essence, kind of picked up right where Foxtrot left off. It was an early start at making multiple episode story arcs. And I have to give this one a lot of credit for laying the groundwork for future arcs throughout the series. Yes, it picks up with the wolves still stealing Chi, and the lions find themselves completely defenseless to stop it. So Laval decides, hey, let's get the eagles to play delivery bird. And this works, and the wolves are like totally what the heck. And the lions, especially Legavis over here, are like, yes, Lavelle, way to go. This episode features a lot of action. There's a nice wolf fight and fight with the lions. We actually get to see a back-to-back fight with Lavelle and Legavis. It's not the first. It's the first time they fight back to back, and it's certainly not the last. And yes, what makes this episode special is how it tends to balance its action with its quiet moments. Of course, the quiet moments typically happen with Lavelle and Legravis. We get the opening conversation with them in the throne room when Legravis encourages Lavelle to have faith. We have the scene in the throne room when they're both debating and Lavelle proposes a bright idea. And then at the end there, where this scene comes in, we get a quiet moment where Lavelle reminds Legravis to have faith too. It's a very sweet moment to watch, and honestly, it's one of my favorite moments throughout the series. But this episode, while it does have a lot of focus on the wolves, a good chunk of focus on Lavelle, Eris, and the other lions, this episode also has a special 30-second blip for Craiger's character development too, as he throws Cruller out of the palace, still ticked that she betrayed him, and he even reminds her that Lavelle saved him in the previous episode, and he's not sure why they should be fighting. Maybe they could be friends. It's one of those first hints that Craiger's starting to break from Crueller's control, and it's really kind of special to watch. It's kind of like the beginning of Craiger's redemption arc that totally gets shattered in episode 16. Just saying. Overall, this episode had a lot of fun. It had its quiet moments, which is something I rarely see in a cartoon for kids where they're meant to be loud and crazy. And this had a lot of good character development overall. So that also, this episode was the one that made me fall in love with Chima, so it automatically gets a lot of bragging rights there. And that's why Cheetah Jackers is my number one favorite episode of Legends of Chima.